welcome to Wesley Impact. In my thought today, I'm going to be continuing my studies in Philippians. We take a look at Wesley Mission's work in caring for carers. And I meet a guest who was faced with the news of losing her mental function, and no one could say exactly when it would happen or how long it would take. Christine Bryden was just 46 when she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Almost 20 years on, she's defied all the odds and is a strong advocate in speaking out for those who can't speak for themselves. Christine has written 2 personal accounts of dealing with the disease and is about to release her 3rd book. Christine, thank you for coming on to the show. Right now, it's Dementia Awareness Month in Australia. You were first diagnosed in May 1995, and at that time you had this senior position. You were First Assistant Secretary in the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet at the time. You say your intellect was the core of work. It would be so important to you, wouldn't it?
Yes. It's interesting. My eldest daughter said that it was a bit like a classical pianist having their hands cut off.
Yeah.
It was that sort of impact for me to have this diagnosis.
And when you were first told, what was your immediate feelings?
Well, shock. I am too young. Just total shock. I had to go back to work to chair a meeting. I was just reeling with shock. Then went back to my doctor, went to tell my boss, took some time off. Really just total shock. And
if I can ask the question, you talk almost like it's a stigma almost, that one day you were this person, you tell them this news, and you're only a day different from what you were yesterday.
Totally. You go in normal to the doctor's office, he looks at some scans, tests, you walk out of the doctor's office and you're a person with Alzheimer's disease and you're not worth.
And the uncertainty of knowing what will happen and when it will happen.
That was very difficult because even this second opinion that I sought, he said, I can't tell you how long you've got. Just get your affairs in order. You might not be able to write in 6 months' time. The very first guy said, you'll be in a nursing home in 5 years, dead within another 3.
Yes. Certainly not the gift of encouragement, anyway. No. That was communicated. And it is the 3rd largest cause of death
yes, it is.
In what we call the developed world.
Yeah.
So what are the misconceptions of the disease, if we could open that one up?
For me, the major misconception is that it's a normal part of ageing. It's not. 3 out of 4 people will never, ever get dementia. That's very important to remember. My grandmother died at 108 without dementia.
We have aged care work, and I know one piece of research that we did into this area was so many people just think dementia is losing your memory. So there are many older people who have a memory loss, which starts very young in life.
Yes.
And they say that's not dementia. Dementia is very different than that, isn't it?
It's very different. It's much more than just memory loss.
Yes.
I wish we could get that message across. It's about being confused about things, about not knowing what your keys are for. About getting lost in public places, somewhere new, getting your words wrong, many different things. I can't think of them all.
The publication of that first book was Who Will I Be When I Die? That was an award-winning title, I know, but that's really God's book for you, isn't it?
It was. I was encouraged to write it by my spiritual advisor, Reverend Elizabeth McKinley, who I'd met on the Christian course, Casillo. She encouraged me to write it. She was praying and encouraging me each month. And I was reluctant. I thought, my brain's going. How am I going to write this thing? And fight the computer and all of this sort of thing and get all those words on the page. But then every week, you'd be saying things like, forgive me, Lord, for the things I've done and all the things I haven't done. And I'd immediately, the book, Christine, the book, I think, God's trying to tell me something here, yes.
And it's been, if you like, a launch of an advocacy for you in the public space, hasn't it?
Very much so. I was the very first person in Australia to speak out and admit to having dementia, coming out, you know.
Yes.
It was not only a fear for the people themselves, but shameful. It was a shameful diagnosis to have. People felt you shouldn't admit to it. Even now, I feel a reluctance to disclose my diagnosis because people around me are that don't know me are busy making jokes. Oh, I'm having a seniors moment. Oh, look, I might have a bit of touch of Alzheimer's disease today.
Let's come back to that in a moment and open up the subject a little bit more. But at this point, I want, if I can, to introduce today's performer. Jordan Warner shares a song that reflects the choice to let go and trust God even in our deepest trials, in his own song called The Word.
Are you tired and lonely, don't know where it is you ought to be? Are you bound by what you know, afraid of letting go? Just say the word. For the ocean's deep and wild beyond your dreams, to step out of the boat and walk upon the sea. There is so much more to find. You don't have to look behind. Say the word, one word, and the word that saves is near. As the tongue in your mouth, as the heart in your chest, its truth is ringing. It's the word of faith that welcomes grace to do what we can't do. Say the word, and the word that saves will save you. So whatever mess you feel you're sinking in, there's no darker, deeper place that Jesus hasn't already been. And he's longing for you to know that you can let go. Say the word, one word, and the word that saves is near. Yes, it is. As the tongue in your mouth, as the heart in your chest, its truth is ringing. It's the word of faith that welcomes grace to do what we can't do. Say the word, and the word that saves will save you. And the word came down, and the word was flesh, and the word he dwelt among us. Seeing deep into our brokenness, the word still chose to love us. Jesus took our place. The door of grace is open wide to all who will call on his name. Just say the word, one word, and the word that saves is near. Oh, as the tongue in your mouth, as the heart in your chest, its truth is ringing clear. It's the word of faith that welcomes grace to do what we can't do. Say the word, and the word that saves will save you. Just say the word, and the word that saves will save you.
Be inspired by Keith Garner's new book, The Authentic Australian Evangelist, Alan Walker. Former Superintendent Alan Walker was once labelled the conscience of the nation, speaking out for the marginalised and the broken across social, political and international debate. Alan's life and work at Wesley Mission is also featured in an address by Keith Garner on DVD. For more information, call 1800 021 821 or visit our website wesleymission.org.au.
Wesley Impact is on our website every week now. So if you'd like to know more about Jordan and his music, you can log on that website, click on the Wesley Impact television link. Look, I'm back and enjoying this conversation with Christine. Look, you became a Christian 5 years before all of those very, very big moments in your life happened. How important was that?
Well, that was God's timing for sure. He picked me up out of a busy emptiness where I was just busy, busy, busy at work and at home. And it was critical for me to have that sense of an eternal perspective, a sense of hope, a faith, a certain future.
You even had an aircraft trip that was a real shock.
Yes, I did. That was part of becoming a Christian, was going on a plane trip. I made lots of plane trips, but this one was really quite scary. So I said, okay, God, if you're really there, I'll try and find some time to look into you. And of course, we landed safely. And I think it was just the day after I was due to leave work, go to another job, and my secretary gave me a parting gift. She was a Christian. Food for the body, a bar of chocolate, and food for the soul, a Bible. And I just gave her a big hug. I said, how did you know? He said, what? You know, she didn't know. She just prayed about what to give me. And that very night I went home, and my daughter had become recently a Christian, and she prayed with me in her bedroom, and I just felt just completely changed from the inside out.
So what did faith mean to you then when you received that news and when you were beginning to handle the challenge of living with and moving forward?
It gave me a tremendous source of power and hope, because each day I could read the scriptures, I could pray, I could just groan without words. I was doing a fair bit of that. That's somewhere in Paul's letters. And it gave me that rock. God was my rock to stand on in all of this.
Now, the question I don't want to miss asking is one that goes through my mind. People often look back on their lives and they say, you know, if I could get rid of that, I'd rub that out and I'd cross this out.
Yeah.
You're on record as having said that if you could have your life again, you wouldn't change it. You'd actually call this a blessing. Now, come on. What do you mean by that?
It pulled me out of an empty busyness. If I hadn't had that diagnosis of dementia, I wouldn't have paused for thought. Even though I was a Christian, I wouldn't have been pulled out of that and given time to reflect before God. I can't remember Basil Hume's words, but he said something along the lines of, I've been given time to reflect on the importance of life and of death and of an eternity with God. I wouldn't have had time to think. I wouldn't have had time to write. And more importantly, I wouldn't have been able to have this mission to reach out and help other people with dementia.
And just one, in a sentence then, what would you say to somebody who was in that place, facing a similar journey?
I would say, have hope. Have a certain hope in a new future. It's a new life in the slow lane of dementia. Discover your inner spirit, nurture your spiritual self. You might lose your cognitive awareness or abilities. You might get all muddled emotionally. You might not reliably cry, or you might unreliably cry. But within, your deep inner spirit will always remain with you despite the ravages of dementia. And that, to me, is a secure knowledge for the family as well as for the person.
Christine, it's been a delight to talk to you. Your integrity and your openness will I think, have helped a lot of people. And I hope that you continue to be used by God and used in the world, just speaking well of this journey that you're taking and making.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be back in just a moment.
It's been 200 years since the first Methodists met in Australia. To celebrate 2 centuries of faith and pioneering care, CEO and presenter Rev Dr Keith Garner takes us back to where it all began.
But we don't begin here at the heart of London. We begin in a town in the north of England.
In this fascinating narrative, Rev Garner chronicles the history of the life and times of the founder of Methodism, John Wesley. This fresh and thought-provoking documentary takes us on a journey throughout the United Kingdom, beginning in John Wesley's hometown of Epworth.
John Wesley was born here on the 17th of June, 1703.
This 1 hour DVD travels onto his education years and beginnings of social justice in Oxford, to his final years in London. For more information on John Wesley, the man and his mission, call 02 9263 5555 or email us at impacttv@wesleymission.org.au.
Globally, there are an estimated 44.4 million cases of dementia, escalating to over 135 million by 2050. At Wesley Mission, caring for carers is one of our top priorities. Let's take a look at the first part of Peter and Vicky's story.
There we go. Now the thing's there, so you hold on to the bed rail. Okay, we're gonna go to the toilet? No, you don't want to go. It's been now 6.5 years since this all started. It was January 2003, and it was a Saturday night, and Peter said to me, I'm not feeling 100%. We're actually getting ready to go out. And instead of saying, Vicky, let's, go to the doctor, he went to the garage and had the exercise equipment and did 100 kilos he lifted. And obviously that sent the blood pressure sky high, and he burst an aneurysm in his head. You want to adjust your chair? That's the way. Had an emergency operation, came back to good health, but unfortunately the doctor said he needed another operation. During that second surgery, Peter had a stroke, and that's when the nightmare really began. Peter and I have been married for 30 years. We have 2 daughters, Cassandra and Eleanor. We are a very strong and supportive family. We work together with Peter in one salon, and over the years I'd probably, raised the girls, helped him, but the thing is with the children, it worked out really well when we were working together and we had the business together. He would just help in every area of hairdressing. Peter would take the girls shopping on his, own if I didn't feel like going. My world turned upside down. All of a sudden, here I was, a working woman. My husband was a working man too. Because he had a little bit more time, he would run around and do most of the financial part of it, the banking. I didn't know exactly what was going on because Peter used to handle it, and you never think these things are going to happen. So when this happens, and you've got to also take care of the house, Peter, the girls, comfort them, shopping, cooking, cleaning, paying bills. And it didn't take me long to realise I was becoming very run down. I realised I needed help, and thank God for places like Wesley Mission that they came in. I said, I need help. I realised I needed help.
Thank you.
The respite to me has been a godsend, because without them,
That's it. That was a good one.
I couldn't do what I have to do. I can actually have a bit of normality in my life.
When I began my journey through Philippians, I reminded you of how affectionate Paul felt towards this church. However, it's interesting that when we reach the 2nd chapter, the great emphasis is upon the unity of God's people. Let me read to you from Philippians chapter 2 and verses 1 to 11. Therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and of mind. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others. In your relationships with one another, have the same mind as in Christ Jesus, who being in the very nature of God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man. He humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Therefore God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name that is above every name, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow, in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue acknowledge that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. We don't know what the challenges were really all about in this church, even though we've been given some details. Paul encourages them to share the same mind and the same love. That's a good way to tackle any challenge together, isn't it? Jesus Christ is not just an example, but the very power that can transform our hearts and our minds. These points are interesting when we put them into the context of how we emphasize, understandably, the significance of independent thought. It's therefore important when we distinguish this in grasping what it means to have one mind. We talk about everybody having their mind. So what does it mean to have one mind? That which is expressed in the self-giving love of Christ. I'm always suspicious of those people claiming that they've never had an argument or a crossword in life. However, what Paul is saying is that by allowing the lordship and leadership of Christ to control our lives, his way will become ours. It's also an inspiration when we're aware that we cannot know everything about the future. Paul encourages the Christian community at Philippi to be united in spirit and in love. The members of this church are not just to look out for themselves, but to feel for the needs of others. Following what can be said to be one of the first hymns of the Christian church, it's an encouragement to see this love worked out in terms of our own lives, and in doing so, we will accomplish God's will. As we heard today, this can be worked out in the most challenging of situations. God is gracious, and he can use people such as Christine to teach us so much about the way of life. Now, when we listen to somebody like Christine talking about what a difference faith has meant, well, it's no wonder she can look over her shoulder and say, this is what I want life to be. I don't want to change it. Because somehow in God's pattern, in God's grace, he weaves into our lives his perfect way. And we weave into our lives our openness to that way. A way which is concerned not just about ourselves, but about others. A way that is concerned that the Lordship of Christ be truly seen at the heart of our lives. It's something that we recognize as being so important. And there's no better place to find that example in the one who became empty for our sakes. That is Jesus Christ.
If you would like to know more about today's topic or for more on Keith's message, contact Keith by writing to Wesley Mission, Post Office Box A5555, Sydney South 1235, or email impacttv@wesleymission.org.au.
Many thanks for joining us. I'm sure you'll want to catch that story of Christine again on our website. And we leave you with an appropriate song. It's sung by Robin Green called One Day at a Time. Until next week, goodbye and God bless you.
Well, I'm only human. Well, I'm just a woman. Help me believe in what I can be and all that I am. Show me the stairway I have to climb. Lord, for my sake, teach me to take one day at a time. One day at a time, sweet Jesus. just give me the strength to do every day what I have